Emma had been looking forward to this weekend for months. She had planned the trip carefully, choosing a hotel in the heart of the city that was known for its luxury and comfort. As a young black woman working in a high-stress job, she often felt overwhelmed and longed for some time to herself. This weekend getaway was meant to be her chance to unwind, relax, and forget about the pressures of work. She had booked the hotel room weeks in advance, chosen a beautiful suite with a view of the city skyline, and packed her bags with excitement. The promise of peaceful days and quiet nights was exactly what Emma needed. She arrived at the hotel on a warm Saturday afternoon, smiling to herself as she stepped out of her car and walked toward the entrance. The hotel lobby was grand, with marble floors, elegant chandeliers, and plush velvet seating. It was everything she had imagined. As she walked to the check-in counter, the receptionist glanced up from his computer screen and met her gaze. His smile seemed forced, but Emma didn't think much of it. "Good afternoon. I have a reservation under the name Emma Turner," she said, her voice steady and calm. The receptionist's eyes flickered for a moment, and he quickly typed something into his computer. After a long pause, he looked up again. "I'm sorry, but it seems your reservation has been cancelled," he said, his tone cold and emotionless. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Cancelled? But I booked this room weeks ago. I received a confirmation email just last week." The receptionist didn't respond immediately. He looked back at his screen and clicked through some more tabs, his fingers tapping nervously. "I'm sorry, miss. I can't find any record of your reservation. Maybe you've confused the dates." Emma felt her frustration rise. She pulled out her phone and showed him the confirmation email she had received. "This is the confirmation. I made the reservation myself," she explained. The receptionist glanced at the email but didn't say anything. He took a deep breath, clearly not wanting to deal with the situation. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. You'll have to leave." Emma blinked in disbelief. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Leave? I just got here. I have a reservation. Why are you asking me to leave?" The receptionist didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the phone on his desk and made a call. Emma's patience was wearing thin, but she didn't want to cause a scene. She quietly stepped aside, hoping someone else would come to help her resolve the issue. Minutes passed, and Emma stood in the lobby, trying to stay calm. She saw other guests checking in, being greeted with smiles and warm words. She couldn't help but feel like she was being treated differently. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a security guard appeared at the counter. He looked at Emma with an almost apologetic expression but said nothing. The receptionist nodded at him, and without warning, the security guard turned to Emma. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you need to leave," he said. Emma felt a wave of shock wash over her. She tried to stay composed, but her voice trembled as she spoke. "What do you mean, leave? I paid for a room, and I'm not going anywhere until this is resolved." The security guard's expression didn't change. "We've been instructed to escort you off the property." Emma's mind raced. She couldn't believe this was happening. Was it because of her race? Was she being treated this way because she was black? She had never been in a situation like this before, and she couldn't understand why they were doing this to her. "I don't understand. I've done nothing wrong. I have every right to stay here. Please, can I speak to your manager?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. The receptionist merely shrugged. "There's nothing we can do. Please leave now, or we'll be forced to take further action." Emma stood frozen, the weight of the situation hitting her all at once. She didn't want to cause trouble, but she also couldn't just let this slide. With a heavy heart, she grabbed her bags and walked toward the exit, the security guard following her at a distance. As she walked past the grand lobby, she could feel the eyes of other guests on her. Some stared curiously, Others avoided her gaze altogether. Emma couldn't help but wonder if they knew why she was being asked to leave. Did they think she was some kind of troublemaker? She stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, still reeling from the experience. Her mind was racing, and she felt a surge of anger and confusion. How could this happen? How could they treat her like this without any explanation? Sitting down on a nearby bench, Emma took a deep breath. She knew she needed to do something about this. She couldn't just let them get away with it. But what could she do? She felt powerless, her hands shaking as she tried to pull herself together. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and Emma pulled it out, her fingers still trembling. It was a text from her father, Thomas Turner, the mayor of the city. She had planned to enjoy this weekend away without bothering him, but now, everything had changed. She needed him. She quickly typed out a message, "Dad, I need your help. They kicked me out of the hotel for no reason, and I don't know what to do." The response came almost instantly, "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Emma stared at the screen, a small sense of relief washing over her. She knew her father would help, but she didn't realize just how much he could do. She had always admired his ability to stay calm under pressure, to take control of any situation. Now, she would need that strength more than ever. She sat on the bench, waiting for her father to arrive. Emma didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let this injustice stand. Her father would make sure of that. As the minutes ticked by, Emma could feel her nerves beginning to settle. She glanced up and saw her father's black SUV pulling into the parking lot. He stepped out with a confident stride, his presence commanding the attention of everyone around him. She felt a sense of hope rise in her chest as he walked toward her. "Let's fix this," Thomas said as he hugged his daughter tightly. Emma, still shaken by the experience, finally allowed herself to relax for a moment. With her father by her side, she knew things would change. The hotel would regret what they had done. As Emma sat on the bench, waiting for her father, she felt a mix of emotions. Her heart was still racing from the scene inside the hotel, but a part of her felt relieved that her father was on his way. She knew that once Thomas Turner, the mayor, got involved, things would change. He had a way of making things right, no matter the situation. Emma looked down at her phone again, her fingers tracing the screen as she scrolled through the messages. She felt a sense of helplessness wash over her. How had something so simple, a weekend getaway, turned into such a nightmare? She had only wanted some peace and quiet, away from the stresses of work and life. But now, all she could think about was the way she had been treated, how they had asked her to leave without explanation, how they had acted like she didn't belong. It was hard for her to shake the feeling that it had all happened because of her race. She had traveled to many places in her life, stayed in countless hotels, and had never once experienced something like this. Sure, there had been small instances, a glance here and there, a comment that made her uncomfortable, but nothing like this. This was different. This was deliberate. Emma's thoughts were interrupted as she heard the sound of a car pulling into the parking lot. She looked up and saw her father's black SUV slowly making its way toward her. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had always admired her father's calm, collected demeanor. He was the mayor, after all. His authority was unquestioned, and people listened when he spoke. And now, he was coming to her aid. The SUV came to a stop, and the door opened. Thomas stepped out, his tall figure radiating confidence. He wore a dark suit, his presence as commanding as always. Emma stood up and walked toward him, a smile breaking through her otherwise tense face. "Dad," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know what happened. They just kicked me out. I don't understand." Thomas gave her a reassuring look, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Emma. You don't have to worry about this anymore. His voice was steady and comforting, like a rock in the middle of a storm. He had always been the one to handle tough situations with grace. I've never felt so unwanted, Emma said, her voice faltering. Like I didn't belong. Her father's face softened. I know, sweetheart. I can only imagine how hurtful that must have been. But they've made a big mistake. I'm going to make sure this is taken care of. We're not leaving until this is resolved. Emma nodded, grateful for his strength. They walked together toward the hotel entrance. The staff inside didn't seem to notice them at first, but as they approached the door, the receptionist looked up, his face draining of color. The same man who had turned her away earlier. Mayor Turner, he stammered, quickly standing up from his desk. How can I help you today? Thomas didn't waste time with pleasantries. I'm here because my daughter, Emma Turner, was asked to leave this hotel for no reason other than the color of her skin. I want to speak to the manager right now. The receptionist blinked in shock, clearly not expecting such a direct confrontation. He glanced toward the back of the lobby, unsure of what to do. Without a word, he picked up the phone and called someone. Emma could feel the tension in the air as she stood beside her father, silently watching the scene unfold. Minutes passed, and Emma began to feel a small sense of hope creeping back into her heart. Her father's calm but powerful presence was already making an impact. The receptionist hung up the phone and motioned for them to follow him. The manager will be with you shortly, he said, his voice shaking slightly. They waited in the grand lobby, surrounded by the soft sounds of the hotel's music and the occasional murmur of guests checking in or out. Emma tried to distract herself by looking around, but her mind kept returning to what had just happened. It was hard to process the fact that something so unjust had occurred in a place that was supposed to offer comfort and security. The manager arrived a few minutes later. She was a tall woman with a professional air about her, but Emma could see the nervousness in her eyes. She looked between Thomas and Emma, unsure of how to address the situation. Mr. Turner, she began, her voice polite but uncertain, I understand there's been some kind of misunderstanding. How can we make this right? Thomas didn't hold back. My daughter was treated horribly by your staff. She was made to leave the premises for no reason, and that is unacceptable. I want to know why she was kicked out. You don't just do that to someone without an explanation. The manager's eyes widened, but she quickly regained her composure. I'm terribly sorry for any inconvenience this has caused, Mr. Turner. We have strict policies, but I assure you, no one here is treated differently because of their race. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then why was I asked to leave? I showed my reservation. I didn't do anything wrong. The manager faltered for a moment, clearly caught off guard by Emma's calm yet direct questioning. I'm not sure what happened. It seems there was a mistake with the reservation, but I can't understand why this was handled the way it was. She glanced nervously at the receptionist, who avoided her gaze. Thomas stepped forward, his voice stern. I've been in this city long enough to know that when people in power start treating others poorly, it's usually not a mistake. It's a pattern. And I won't stand for it, especially when it's my daughter being treated this way. The manager swallowed hard. Mr. Turner, I assure you, we will investigate this thoroughly. I'll make sure your daughter receives a complimentary stay, and I'll personally oversee the review of your reservation. This will not happen again. But Thomas was not convinced. It's not about a free stay. It's about accountability. Your staff needs to know that actions like this have consequences. Emma could see the tension in the air, the weight of her father's words hanging heavy in the lobby. The manager quickly nodded, her face flushed with embarrassment. We'll do whatever it takes to make things right. The conversation was far from over, but Emma could already feel the power shifting. Her father's presence was enough to make the hotel staff realize the gravity of the situation. Emma had always known her father had influence, but in this moment, she understood just how much his position mattered. As they left the hotel together, Emma felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. They hadn't resolved everything yet, but they were on the right path. And with her father by her side, she knew they would make sure the hotel staff understood the real consequences of their actions. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Emma would not let this injustice slide. She was ready to see it through, and with her father's support, she knew she had the strength to stand up for what was right. The moment Emma and her father left the hotel lobby, she felt a wave of mixed emotions rush over her. Her father's presence had been enough to make the hotel staff realize that things were about to get serious, but Emma wasn't sure how far things would go. She had never expected something like this to happen in her own city, and now that it had, she wasn't sure what the next step would be. As they walked toward the car, Emma glanced over at her father. He seemed calm, as always, but she could tell that there was more going on in his mind than he let on. His face was set in a serious expression, and his hand gripped the door handle of the car tightly as he opened it for her. She slipped into the passenger seat, her thoughts racing. "Dad, what happens now?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with uncertainty. Thomas took a deep breath before answering. "Now, we make sure that this doesn't happen again, not just to you, but to anyone else. We have to make sure this hotel is held accountable for how they treated you." Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She had always known her father was a man of action, someone who didn't let things slide when they weren't right. But she had never imagined that she would be at the center of one of his campaigns. He started the car, pulling out of the parking lot, and they began to drive in silence. The city streets passed by, but Emma wasn't really paying attention to the scenery. Her mind kept returning to the events at the hotel, to the way she had been treated, to the looks from the staff and the feeling of being an outsider. It was hard to shake off the hurt and confusion she felt. As they drove, her father turned to her. "I'm going to make sure that the hotel is investigated. I'll reach out to the local news, and if necessary, I'll take it to the city council. This kind of behavior won't be tolerated." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The thought of her father taking this to the news and the council made it all feel so real. It wasn't just a bad experience, it was going to be something that everyone would know about. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that level of attention. "But, Dad, do you think that's going too far?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I mean, I just wanted to get away for the weekend. I didn't expect this to turn into a big thing." Her father's face softened, and he reached over to give her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Emma, you didn't ask for this. What happened to you wasn't just a mistake. It was wrong, and I can't let it slide. It's bigger than just you. We have to make sure that no one else goes through what you went through today. And if it takes making this public, then so be it." Emma sat back in her seat, her mind still spinning. She had never been someone to seek attention, and now, with her father's plan to bring this to the public eye, she was going to be thrust into the spotlight. But deep down, she knew he was right. If no one stood up against what had happened, it would only encourage more of the same. "Okay," she said, her voice quieter now, filled with determination. "Let's do it. Let's make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Thomas smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. "That's my girl." They drove in silence for a few more minutes, and Emma could feel the weight of what was to come. But with her father by her side, she knew she wasn't alone. She could already feel the strength of his resolve, the way he always fought for what was right. And now, she would stand with him, ready to take on whatever came next. As they reached home, Emma stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. The familiar sights of her neighborhood were comforting, but her mind was still racing. What if the hotel fought back? What if people didn't believe her? She couldn't help but wonder how this would all unfold. Inside, Thomas sat down at his desk and immediately started making calls. Emma watched him for a moment, admiring the way he handled everything with such focus. She knew her father's job wasn't easy, but today, she saw him in a new light. He wasn't just the mayor. He was someone who would stand up for his family, no matter the cost. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from her best friend, Mia. "Hey, how's the weekend going? You still at the hotel?" Emma stared at the message for a few seconds before typing back, her fingers moving quickly. "You won't believe what happened. I was kicked out of the hotel." She paused before sending the message, unsure of how much to share. But before she could change her mind, Mia's reply came in. "What? Why? Are you okay?" Emma took a deep breath and replied with a short explanation of what had happened. She left out the part about her father getting involved for now. She didn't want to burden Mia with too much information, but she knew she couldn't keep everything inside. Mia was her closest friend, and Emma needed to talk to someone who understood. "I'm okay, just really shaken up. My dad is handling it. I think it's going to be a big deal." Mia's response was immediate. "Your dad? Wait, he's going to fix it, right? Don't let this slide." Emma smiled, grateful for her friend's support. She typed back a quick response. "I won't. He's already making calls. I just don't know what's going to happen next." Before Mia could reply, Emma heard her father's voice from the next room. "Emma, I'm going to need you to make a statement. We can't just rely on the hotel's version of events. I want to make sure everything is documented." Emma stood up from the couch and walked toward her father's office. He was on the phone with someone, his voice low and steady. She knew what he meant. They had to make sure there was an official record of everything that had happened, from the moment she was asked to leave to the way the hotel staff had treated her. As she stood in the doorway, Thomas looked up and gave her a nod. "I'm going to get this sorted, Emma. But I need your help to make sure it's all on the record." Emma took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready. Let's do it." Her father hung up the phone and turned to face her, his expression serious. "We're going to make sure no one else has to go through what you did today. You've got the strength to handle this, and I'll be right here with you the whole way." Emma smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. She had been unsure at first, but now, with her father's words echoing in her mind, she knew she was doing the right thing. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly. And with her father by her side, she knew they could make a real difference. The next few days would be difficult. There would be phone calls, meetings, and possibly a fight ahead. But Emma was ready. She wasn't going to let this injustice go unnoticed. And she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. This part continues to build on the emotional journey of Emma, showing her transition from uncertainty to determination, while also highlighting the relationship between her and her father. It sets the stage for the upcoming confrontation and resolution, keeping the audience engaged with Emma's internal struggles and her growth as she decides to take action. The next morning, Emma woke up with a sense of determination that hadn't been there the day before. The events at the hotel still lingered in her mind, but she had made her decision. She wasn't going to let what happened to her be swept under the rug. Not after everything she had gone through. She had her father's support, and together, they were going to hold the hotel accountable. As she walked into the kitchen, her father was already there, sipping his coffee. He was focused, as usual, on the task at hand. Emma could see the gears turning in his mind as he thought about the steps ahead. She admired how he always seemed to know exactly what needed to be done. He had that rare ability to stay calm and level-headed, no matter the situation. "Morning, Emma," Thomas said, looking up from his papers with a reassuring smile. "You sleep okay?" Emma nodded. I did. But I'm ready now. Let's get this over with. Her father placed his coffee cup down and stood up. We're going to make sure everything's in order. I've already made a few calls, and I think it's time we take this to the next level. I want to speak to the hotel's management directly and make sure they understand what's at stake here. Emma sat down at the table, feeling a little nervous but also confident. Her father had already done so much. She knew now that this wasn't just about her, it was about sending a message to others who might have experienced the same thing. Do you think they'll listen? Emma asked, glancing at her father. I mean, they kicked me out without any reason. Do you think they'll actually take responsibility for it? Her father gave her a firm look. They have no choice but to listen, Emma. You were treated unfairly, and the way they've handled this is unacceptable. We're not asking them to just apologize. We're asking them to take accountability. Emma nodded. She knew he was right. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She had always been taught to stand up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. And now, she was putting those lessons into action. As they got into the car and headed toward the hotel, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a small issue anymore. This was bigger than her. It was about fairness, respect, and equality. The hotel had made a mistake, but the world wouldn't change unless people like her and her father took action. They arrived at the hotel, and Emma felt her heart race as they walked through the grand lobby. It looked just like it had the day before, but now, it felt different. It no longer felt like a place of comfort and luxury. It felt like a place where her rights had been ignored, a place where she had been treated unfairly. As they approached the front desk, the same receptionist from the day before looked up, his face going pale when he saw Thomas. He quickly stood up from his chair and rushed over to them. Mayor Turner, good morning, the receptionist said, his voice shaking slightly. How can I assist you today? Thomas didn't waste time with small talk. I'm here because my daughter was asked to leave this hotel without reason. I need to speak with your manager right now. The receptionist froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard. He quickly picked up the phone and dialed the manager's number. Emma could see the fear in his eyes as he waited for someone to pick up. While they waited, Emma glanced around the lobby. She noticed the other guests walking by, some of them glancing at her and her father. She could feel their curiosity, their judgment. But she didn't care. She wasn't here to please anyone. She was here to make sure that what had happened to her wouldn't happen again. The manager arrived shortly after, her face tense and apologetic as she approached. Mr. Turner, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. I understand you're upset, but I assure you, we never intended for your daughter to be treated this way. There must have been a mistake. Thomas crossed his arms, his expression stern. A mistake, he repeated. Your staff kicked my daughter out of this hotel. That's not a mistake. That's poor judgment and lack of training. I'm here to make sure you understand the severity of the situation. The manager looked uncomfortable but nodded. Of course, Mr. Turner. I understand. I'd like to assure you that we will be investigating this matter thoroughly. We will review the actions of the staff involved and make sure this never happens again. Emma, who had been silent until now, couldn't help herself. I don't want just an investigation, she said, her voice steady but firm. I want accountability. You need to make sure that no one else is treated like this, not just apologize and sweep it under the rug. The manager shifted uncomfortably, but Emma could tell that her words were having an effect. I understand, she said. We will take the necessary steps to ensure this does not happen again. I'll be speaking with the staff personally and conducting a full review of our policies. Thomas gave Emma a nod, signaling that it was time to move forward. That's a start. But we're not done here yet. I'll be in touch with the city council to make sure that you're held accountable for how this situation was handled. The manager's face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Turner, please, let me assure you, we're taking this very seriously. I will personally oversee the investigation, and I promise we will make things right." Emma looked at her father, who gave her a reassuring smile. "We're not here to make enemies, but we won't stand by while people are treated unfairly. We're going to make sure this hotel understands the importance of respect and equality." As they turned to leave, Emma felt a sense of closure start to settle in. She had stood up for herself, and her father had been there every step of the way. It wasn't over yet, but it felt like they were moving in the right direction. As they walked out of the hotel, Emma took a deep breath. She had done it. She had faced her fears and spoken up for what was right. And no matter what happened next, she knew she had made a difference. As they drove away, Emma couldn't help but feel proud of herself. She had always known that her father was a man of action, someone who didn't shy away from difficult situations. But now, she realized that she, too, had the strength to stand up for what was right. And with her father's guidance, she knew she would never back down. The days after their confrontation at the hotel felt like a whirlwind to Emma. Her father had immediately set things in motion. Calls were made, meetings scheduled, and soon enough, the hotel management had no choice but to take full responsibility for what had happened. Emma had been a little unsure at first, but seeing her father's determination and the way he handled everything gave her confidence. One afternoon, just a few days after the incident, Emma found herself sitting at the dining table, her laptop open in front of her. Her inbox was flooded with emails, mostly from journalists and media outlets wanting to get her side of the story. She wasn't sure how to feel about the attention. Part of her wanted to disappear from the spotlight and put the whole ordeal behind her, but another part of her realized that sharing her story could be important. It wasn't just about her, it was about the people who had faced similar situations but never had the chance to speak out. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mia. "How's it going? Any updates? Are you going to do an interview?" Emma stared at the message for a moment before typing back. "It's crazy. They're offering a public apology, and there's a full investigation going on. I don't know about the interview yet, but I'm thinking about it." Mia's reply came almost immediately. "You've got this, Emma. Don't let them get away with it. I'm proud of you." Emma smiled at the message, feeling a sense of gratitude for her friend's support. It was easy to get lost in the chaos of everything that had happened, but messages like this reminded her that she wasn't alone in this. She closed her laptop and stood up, walking over to the window to look out at the city below. Her father had been doing everything in his power to make sure the hotel took full accountability for its actions. They were being transparent, holding public hearings, and making sure the staff involved were properly trained in anti-discrimination policies. The city council had even been involved, and Emma's father had been firm about ensuring no other guests would ever experience what she had. It wasn't just about the hotel anymore. This was bigger. Her father had pushed for systemic change. He wanted to make sure that no one else would be treated the way Emma had been. And as much as it terrified her to be at the center of this, she knew it was worth it. People needed to see that standing up for yourself could lead to real change. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Emma could sense the weight of everything that had happened. Her father had a calm presence, but even he was feeling the pressure. She could tell by the way he massaged his temples and the way he occasionally glanced at his phone. But despite it all, he never once showed any sign of backing down. "How are you holding up, Emma?" her father asked, breaking the silence. She paused, thinking about the question. "I'm okay, I think. It's just, a lot. The attention, the pressure. I never expected something like this to happen to me. But now, it feels like it's bigger than just me. I feel like I'm part of something important." Her father nodded, his eyes full of pride. You've done something remarkable, Emma. You've shown people that they don't have to stay silent when things go wrong. You're not just standing up for yourself, you're standing up for everyone who's ever been treated unfairly. Emma smiled, grateful for his words. It was strange, but hearing her father say that made her feel more confident than ever. He had always been her rock, her guiding light, but now, she felt like she was starting to step into her own strength. The following week, Emma was invited to speak at a public forum hosted by the city council. It was a chance for her to share her story, for the public to hear firsthand about what had happened, and for the hotel to offer a public apology. Emma had been hesitant at first, unsure of whether she was ready to speak in front of so many people. But as the event approached, she realized that this was her chance to make a real difference. When the day of the forum arrived, Emma felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. She had dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant outfit. Her father had been by her side throughout the entire process, and now, as they walked into the council chamber, she could feel the weight of the moment. The room was packed with reporters, local residents, and city officials. Emma took a deep breath as she walked to the podium, her heart beating faster with each step. Her father sat in the front row, his eyes filled with encouragement. As she stood before the crowd, Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had practiced her speech over and over again, but when she finally spoke, it was as if the words flowed naturally. "I'm standing here today because I was treated unfairly," she began, her voice steady and strong. "I was asked to leave a hotel for no reason other than the color of my skin. And that's not something that should happen in the city or anywhere." Emma paused, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. She could see the faces in the audience, all eyes on her, and she felt a wave of support from the room. This wasn't just about her story, it was about everyone who had been treated unfairly, everyone who had been made to feel like they didn't belong. "Since that day, my father and I have worked together to ensure that this doesn't happen again. The hotel has taken responsibility, and they've committed to making changes. But we're not done yet. We need to make sure that everyone who walks into a place like that knows they will be treated with respect, no matter what." Emma felt her voice growing stronger with each word. She wasn't just telling her story anymore. She was leading a movement, encouraging people to stand up for themselves, to speak out against injustice, and to demand better. "Thank you for listening to my story," she concluded, her heart full. "And thank you for standing with me. We all have a role to play in making our community stronger, and I'm proud to be part of that change." The room erupted in applause, and Emma felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. As she walked back to her seat, her father stood up, his face beaming with pride. "You did great, Emma," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad," Emma replied, her eyes shining. "Thank you for everything." The journey wasn't over. The hotel had agreed to make the changes they promised, but Emma knew that change was an ongoing process. But in that moment, as the applause continued and people came up to shake her hand, she realized just how much one person's courage could impact the world. With her father's support and the courage to stand up for what was right, Emma knew she had made a difference. And in the end, that was all that mattered.